She slipped into my bed softly whispering that she couldn't sleep without Mitha. Stars stretched endlessly across the observation deck windows as Lieutenant Jake Morrison sat alone nursing his third cup of coffee that night, and the cold, metallic walls of the human research station hummed with the gentle rhythm of life support systems, maintaining their fragile existence in the void of space. But his mind wandered far from the technical specifications and patrol schedules that usually occupied his thoughts, because ever since the Velkari delegation arrived 3 months ago, nothing felt quite the same anymore. Her name was Lyra, and she stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that shimmered like moonlight on water and eyes that held galaxies within their violet depths. And when she first stepped off the transport vessel, Jake had been assigned as her cultural liaison, a role he initially accepted with professional detachment, but that detachment crumbled the first time she smiled at him, revealing those strange yet beautiful features that marked her as unmistakably alien yet somehow achingly familiar. The Velkari were a mystery to human scientists and diplomats alike, because their civilization spanned dozens of star systems, and their technology made human achievements look like primitive cave paintings, yet they approached Earth with curiosity rather than conquest, with offers of trade and knowledge, exchange rather than demands and threats, and Lyra served as their chief ambassador, a role that required her to spend long hours with Jake learning about human customs and teaching him about her own people. In return, those teaching sessions became the highlight of his days because Lyra possessed an infectious enthusiasm for learning, and she asked questions that made him see his own species with fresh eyes, wondering why humans shook hands instead of touching foreheads, or why they feared the dark, when darkness held such beauty and peace. And in turn, she shared stories of her homeworld Velkara Prime, where 3 moons danced in the sky, and bioluminescent forests sang with the voices of creatures humans had never imagined, and her descriptions painted pictures so vivid that Jake sometimes felt he had walked those alien paths himself. But something shifted between them during their 5th week together, when a solar storm forced an evacuation of the outer modules, and Jake found himself trapped with Lyra in the emergency shelter for 18 hours with nothing but emergency rations and the dim glow of backup lighting. And in that confined space, with danger crackling just beyond the reinforced walls, they talked about more than cultural exchange protocols and diplomatic procedures. And Lyra told him about loneliness, about being the only one of her kind on this station, surrounded by aliens who looked at her with wonder and fear in equal measure. And Jake found himself confessing his own isolation, admitting that even among his fellow humans he often felt like an outsider, someone who never quite fit the mold expected of him. When the storm passed and they emerged from the shelter, something unspoken had changed between them, because the professional distance they maintained dissolved into genuine friendship, and then into something deeper that neither could quite name, but both felt growing with each passing day. And Jake noticed how his heart quickened when Lyra entered a room, and how her luminescent skin seemed to glow brighter when she laughed at his terrible jokes about Earth history, and he caught her watching him sometimes with an expression that transcended the barriers of species and language, speaking directly to something primal and truth or other. Humans on the station began to notice too, and whispers followed Jake through the corridors as crew members speculated about the nature of his relationship with the alien ambassador, and some looked at him with disgust, while others showed curiosity, or even envy. But Jake found he cared less about their opinions with each passing day, because when he was with Lyra, the rest of the universe faded into insignificance, and all that mattered was the sound of her voice, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, and the way she tilted her head when considering a new idea, as if she could hear frequencies beyond human perception. Commander Patricia Walsh called him into her office one afternoon, and her expression carried concern rather than anger, as she asked him directly if he understood the complications his friendship with Lyra might create, because humans and Velkari had no framework for interspecies relationships, and no one knew if such a thing was even possible on any level beyond. The Platonic and Jake listened respectfully, but his answer came without hesitation, because he told her that he understood the risks and the unknowns, but that Lyra had become important to him in ways couldn't fully explain and wouldn't apologize Four and Patricia studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly and telling him to be careful because hearts were fragile things. Regardless of what species they belonged to that night, Lyra invited Jake to her quarters for the first time, and he entered the space she had transformed with touches of her homeworld. And bioluminescent plants climbed the walls, casting everything in a soft ethereal glow, and crystalline wind chimes hung from the ceiling, singing with the ventilation currents. And in the center of it all, Lyra waited, wearing traditional Valkyrie robes that flowed like liquid starlight, and she gestured for him to sit on the low cushions, arranged around a small table, and she served him a beverage from her world that tasted like honey and lightning, and made his thoughts feel clearer and sharper than ever before. They talked late into the night about everything and nothing, and Lyra told him about Valkyrie bonding customs, how her people believed that souls could recognize each other across impossible distances, and that when two souls met, they created a harmony that resonated through the universe itself. And Jake listened with his heart pounding because he recognized the truth in her words, felt it in every fiber of his being whenever she was near. And when she finally asked him if humans believed in such things, he could only answer honestly that he hadn't before, but that she had made him a believer. Lyra moved closer then, and her hand reached out tentatively to touch his face, and her skin felt warm and smooth, like polished stone heated by the sun, and her touch sent shivers through him. That had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with connection, and she whispered that her people had a saying that love was the one force in the universe that could bridge any distance, span any difference, and make strangers into family. And Jake leaned into her touch and whispered back that humans had similar sayings, but that he had never truly understood them until now. The weeks that followed became a careful dance of discovery as Jake and Lyra explored the boundaries of what was possible between them, and they learned that despite their differences, their hearts beat the same language, and that desire transcended biology when tempered with genuine care and affection, and they stole moments together. Whenever duty allowed, meeting in hidden corners of the station, or taking long walks through the botanical gardens where earth plants and Valkyrie specimens grew side by side in harmonious coexistence, and their relationship bloomed like those hybrid gardens, growing stronger and more beautiful with each passing day. But happiness never lasts forever unchallenged, and word of their relationship eventually reached Earth's command, and the messages came swift and harsh, demanding explanations and threatening consequences. Because humanity's first contact with an advanced alien species was too important to risk on what the bureaucrats called inappropriate fraternization, and Jake found himself facing a choice between his career and his heart, between the approval of his species and the love of someone who made him feel more alive than he ever had. Before, Lyra faced similar pressure from her own people because the Valkyrie High Council viewed her relationship with a human as a dangerous precedent that could complicate delicate diplomatic negotiations, and they sent messages ordering her to cease all personal contact with Jake and maintain strictly professional boundaries, and she read those messages with tears streaming down her face because Valkyrie could cry just like humans, though their tears glowed faintly with bioluminescence, and she told Jake that her people valued duty above all else, and that she had never before considered defying their wishes. They sat together in the observation deck that night, watching the stars. Wheels slowly passed, and contemplating futures that seemed to grow darker with each passing moment, and Jake held Lyra's hand, feeling the warmth of her skin and the steady pulse of her heartbeat. And he told her that he wouldn't ask her to choose between him and her people because he knew the weight of such a choice and understood the pain it would cause. And Lyra turned to him with those galaxy eyes shining with unshed tears, and she told him that he hadn't asked, but that she was choosing anyway, because some bonds were too strong to break, even for duty, even for honor, even for the expectations of entire civilizations. The decision made everything both simpler and infinitely more complicated because Jake and Lyra submitted their formal resignations from their respective positions and announced their intention to remain together, regardless of what their governments decided, and the firestorm that followed threatened to derail the entire diplomatic mission, as both sides accused the other of using seduction and manipulation to gain advantage in conspiracy theorists. On both worlds spun wild tales about secret agendas and hidden motives, but something unexpected hop.